Off the Track is brought to you by Windsor Park Stud, your first choice for stallions.
Yes, welcome along to another Off the Track brought to you by Windsor Park Stud. We look forward, as they are, to the new season with their wonderful lineup of stallions. And of course, as you know, I'm very keen on the Master Craftsman's look out when they start running as 2-year-olds, because they're certainly doing that up the north. Well, talking of breeding, the industry, I have our guest today is what you'd probably say the next generation. Mark Chittick, welcome along.
Good morning, Steve.
Chittick, should I say? I was going to say Chitty because, like Mark Chitty, Roddy Schick, Windsor Park, the Fell Boys, you are that next generation coming through.
Yeah, well, certainly we've probably been regarded as the younger brigade, but I don't know whether that's quite the case now. But certainly there's a really good group of young guys, or middle-aged guys now coming through in the industry. And not only in the breeding industry, I think as well, some of the young trainers as well. We have got a good group.
It's a real changing of the guard, isn't it? The changing face of the industry in terms of the breeding side of it. I mean, as I say, yourself, with the size of your operation, and it must stand you in good stead that you've basically grown up with these guys in the industry.
Yeah, certainly. A lot of us are very, very good friends. A lot of us have, as you say, grown up in New Zealand and gone out throughout the world and learnt our different trades and things like that. And but I think the experience that we have in the industry now, and leading off the base of where we are breeding horses, I think it stands us all in good stead.
And the other thing, your fathers, who primarily were the people that ran the stud, are still there in the background, aren't they?
Yeah, certainly. And at the end of the day, they've got a massive amount of experience, and we must not forget that. And we're very fortunate, a lot of us, to still have those guys involved with that experience, with that passion, and still involved in our great industry, racing and breeding. Yeah.
Hey, listen, I want to take you right back. We do this all the time, Where were you born? Were you born in Manawatu, or were you further south?
No, we were further south than that. We were in the Wairarapa, and I was actually born in Lower Hutt, but at that stage, Mary and Gary were sheep farming in Martinborough. I think I was there till I was about 2, and then we actually moved closer to Masterton. Gary was sort of in between farms, and he bought some properties around close to Masterton there.
So, were there any people involved in running horses before Gary, or was Gary the sort of the start of it?
My grandfather always raced horses. And he and Gary raced horses, and so there's always been a bit of a flame there. Well,
that's a hell of a leap from ownership to all of a sudden running a stud or being involved in a stud. How did that come about?
Yeah, it certainly was. And Gary had a couple of properties on the edge of Masterton, and one he was looking to on-sell, and the government brought in the capital gains tax, and it's quite a long story that. But to cut a long story short, he started looking for a stallion to sort of write off some of the tax, and that's how it came about. And
so, what was his first horse?
Super Grey was his first horse, and at Thornton Park. That's where Thornton Park was developed.
Okay, and so that's when you moved to Manawatu. Was that the stage?
No, we were in the Wairarapa until I was about 8,
Yep.
8 or 9, and then he started looking at moving further north, and he looked between. Looked for properties in the Manawatu and also in the Waikato at that time.
Okay. So was he attracted to the Palmerston Manawatu, I suppose, because of Fairdale's success and that stage?
That's right, and it was obviously very strong in the thoroughbred breeding at that stage, and he a mate of his was a real estate agent, and they ended up by going to visit Owen Mitchell, who was farming just south of Palmerston, north at Longburn there, next door to his brother Gordon, and they'd stood so big there between them, and this real estate agent said, "Look, this bloke will know where there's a farm, that you could buy," and he just said, "What about this one?"
The rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah.
So you were thrust in to involvement in horses, Super Grey, and it was sort of like the first stallion, big step.
Yep, and then he went from Super Grey into Sir Godfrey, and
the choice though to get Centane. I mean, he was born in 1980, so we're back in the 80s now. And so when did that come from? Where did the opportunity come for getting Centane?
They were sort of a few of them down there, Ollie Goodwin and the Williams, and Gary, and that they were buying horses together, the likes of Sound Reason and that, and they identified Centane early, and they had an attempt to buy him, and then he was still racing, and then their offer was turned down because he had greater things ahead of him on the racetrack, and then he actually injured himself, and they came back to them. And that's how they secured the horse. And as I say, with the help of the Williamses in particular, and even to this day with the stallions that obviously next generation now, but Sam and I do a lot of business together. He's supported me all the way through they've supported us all the way through with the stallions that we've bought. And now with the stallions that they've bought, we're involved down there too.
Yeah, I mean, and he kicked a goal for you. I mean, magnificent looking horse too, Centane.
Yeah, he certainly was, and that was the two things that attracted Gary and those guys to him were his looks and also his turn of foot, and that's a policy that we obviously use to this day.
I was going to say, because that seems to be a trend. Race performance is something you always look for.
Yeah, certainly. We do believe that most of the mares that come to these stallions are slower than them, so the horse has to be able to pass on a bit of speed. They have to be able to upgrade, and he certainly did. And honestly, Centane,
leading first season sire.
Yeah, leading first season sire, and he quinelled the Manawatu Sire's produce. That was a big evening, that one, I can tell you. So he kicked off. I think it was a 13 individual winners in that first year, and he just went from strength to strength. And I mean, we've got so much to thank him for over the last, God knows how many years.
Because I dare say, I mean, Super Grey, Sir Godfrey, you're meandering along the path of being, stallion owners, to all of a sudden, bang. You're there towards the top.
Yeah, and I mean, his legacy obviously is still continues long after his death with the strength of his broodmare.
So you're sitting there, Thornton Park, Manawatu. Are you thinking at that stage? I mean, the sales were on at Trent. Were you doing the sales? Were you working at the sales?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We probably my sisters and I. We started at the sales at a very young age at Trentham, and great memories of Trentham with the sales venue being right on the track there like that, and everybody staying close by, and that really great memories of Trentham.
Hey, look, you were going to school at that stage, but was there always the line going to be you coming into the industry, or did you have a passion for something else?
I certainly had a passion for agriculture and farming and that sort of thing. I certainly don't enjoy being inside that much, but I think in this industry, and when your family's involved, it is 24/7, and it is unbelievably enjoyable, and it can take you all over the world. You meet all sorts of people, and so therefore it's quite a hard industry to get out of. And it is so enjoyable. It's very easy.
It's like a drug, isn't it? And it took you around the world. You were saying to me you went to Australia, worked there, and
just after I left school. I actually did a year or so at Toorak ski field, which was a bit of fun. So that was a little bit.
So
of
you can
fun.
ski.
Oh, I don't know about that.
You went for the bunnies, did you?
It was fun. Yeah.
The ski bunnies.
Yeah. And then I went over to Whitton Stud for 2 spells for sort of 18 months, and really enjoyed that. At the time that I was there, they were standing Bletchingley and Vane and Mascay, lunchtime. I think they had 8 or 9 stallions, and they really were top of the tree. And it's an amazing farm, so 3,000 acres, and they run a lot of cattle and that as well. So you weren't just there for the horses. We were often out mustering, big herds of cows and things like that. So it was a whole lot of fun, and I learnt a lot there, and
forged a relationship, I dare say, with Anthony.
Yeah,
Anthony
Thompson, who now owns and runs Whitton, he's a very close friend of mine. He was still at school when I was there, and in particular. Tim Ferris was the stud master at the time there, who was actually a Kiwi and started off with David Benjamin, I think, etc. But I learnt a lot from Tim. He was he certainly ran a really good farm, and then basically straight from Whitton I went over to the Irish National Stud and did the Irish National Stud course.
You come back home. Were you still at Manawatu at that stage?
Yeah, I was. Yeah? I was. Gary had a few health problems, and he was going in for an operation, and I rang him at the end of the Irish National Stud course to say that I'd passed, and he said, "What are your plans now?" And I sort of
had a bit like that too, wouldn't it?
grand plans of staying overseas for a bit longer and going through the States and that sort of thing. But he was going to
ski fields,
pretty major operation. So I came home, and at the time I think I must have been 19 or 20, and really took it on as a challenge rather than a chore. And Centane had really hit his straps. He was. I think we had like 200 applications for 80 mares that year, so we probably had the 80 best mares in the country that year going to Centane.
So you restricted his book?
Yeah, we did.
You see,
yeah.
the Fells, when I had Gerald in here last year, they served over 100 mares. I didn't realise back in those days with Pakistan.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So you restricted him down?
He served about 120 mares with our own and the outside mares. But it was, as I say, it was a really good challenge. And as I say, it was sort of, even though I was young and didn't have a lot of experience, it was easy because we were dealing with such great stock.
Hey, listen, so you're sitting there. Next minute, there's a knock on the door from the dairy company saying, we wouldn't mind buying your land. Yeah,
we'd actually just bought the next door neighbour, so we'd gone from roundabout figures 300 acres to 500 acres, and only just 12 months beforehand. So that was the original whole Mitchell block, and they came along and they were expanding and they needed land, etc. So from Mary and Gary's point of view, it was no way, it's our whole lifestyle. And listen, I loved Palmerston North and I thought it was me for life as well. But they kept knocking. The
numbers kept going up and up and up.
And so at that stage, I remember Gary saying to me, we've really got to look at this seriously because Centane's at the top of the tree. If for whatever reason he had an early departure, we'd be sitting here with a 500-acre sheep and beef farm that we've been offered a lot for. You know? So at that stage, we actually looked at two options. We looked at increasing the farming side of our operation, which was we looked at a big farm in the Hawke's Bay, and we would have stayed in horses but kept it at the same sort of size. Or Waikato Stud was mentioned to us, and Henry Plumtree was actually the main man in facilitating that sort of deal and that operation.
Was that under Elders Finance? Was it?
Exactly, you're spot on there, Steve. And Rick Williams was running it, but Henry said to us, it's not on the market, but it could be bought, and it went from there.
And not only bought, I mean, not just the land, it was the whole as a going concern.
Yeah, well, Gary made the decision then. He made the decision to buy the place as a going concern, and they were, in roundabout figures, they were 50 mares and we were 50 mares, and they were 3 stallions and we were 2 stallions at that stage, which were Centane and Chittick. But his main foresight was to identify their 50 mares were a whole lot better calibre than our 50 mares on the whole. So if we could have got hold of some of those sorts of mares and been using Centane over them, it would step us up the ladder a bit.
So that was what, 92, 93, something like that?
Yep, exactly, 20 odd years ago.
A hell of a time that year. 1993, and looking back as I have researched, 93 must have, because you bought out at that same year, you bought out Defensive Play.
No, Defensive Play was already part of Waikato
Stud, but he was there.
It was Defensive Play, Masterclass and Pompey Court.
Okay. He was shuttling, one of the few, if not one of the early shuttling horses?
Yeah, so that was, obviously he was put in place by the previous management, Rick and Gordon Cunningham actually. And Gordon stayed on for a couple of months when we arrived, and I really value that time I had with Gordon as well. Learned a lot of him and also learned a lot about the farm, and Gordon and I still have a really good relationship.
Listen, I mean, it's clear as we go through this that these associations, Sam Williams, Anthony Thompson, Gordon Kang, all of these people you've met on the way through. It's now still very much integral part of your work.
Oh,
now.
Very much so, and I suppose we've watched all of ourselves, succeed and that sort of thing. And at the end of the day, you need those sort of people around you. 93
was also another very significant year because it was the year a very special horse was foaled in O'Reilly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he was actually a weanling when we bought Waikato Stud.
Okay.
So he was there as a foal when we took the place over.
I was working there. When I say working, it was Rights and Bloodstock at that time. Let's talk O'Reilly because it's a wonderful story. We've established how you've got the horse. He's there. He's on the ground. You're going to put him in the sales. He's going to go to Karaka.
He was going to Karaka, and he was a lovely horse. He was a lovely horse all the way through, and Gary had said to me on a couple of occasions, we should be keeping this colt. We should roll the dice. And as it was, we had a couple of we'd been to the Gold Coast sales, and with couple of horses, and we came back, and the day that we got back, Dave O'Sullivan actually contacted us and
Said, hey, look, I've got a syndicate together.
Yep, want to put a syndicate together. I want to do a few pre-sale
Which
checks.
was, they wanted to scope the horse, which hadn't been done pre-sale.
No, and we had a discussion about it, and we sort of thought, well, not a bad idea actually, because it would be pretty embarrassing for him to go through,
Put it all together
maybe
and then find
top
it.
the sale,
Yep.
and then have something go wrong afterwards. And so Dave's vet came out, Jim Marks came out, and to vet the horse, to scope the horse, and in hindsight, the horse passed under the conditions of sale.
This is the thing, just to clarify, because it was on the cusp, but in fact, under the conditions of saying the Baines fell in, which, without going into too much detail, it's 4-5, grade 4-5 is a fail. He was a 3, something around there.
Yeah, two or three, and still was a whole lot later in his life too, because we scoped him out of interest 10 years later or something like that, and nothing had changed. But of course, he wasn't being scoped under the conditions of sale, and Marksy couldn't say, well, this horse is 100%.
So all of a sudden, geez, you got the sail topper sitting in your yard. Next minute, I can remember the time.
Yeah.
I mean, Wrightsons were upset. Everybody was disappointed.
Everybody was disappointed. But obviously mainly to Gary's credit at that time, because it was a big blow. We'd borrowed a lot of money to come north and take over the place, going concern, etc. And he said, "Bugger it, we're gonna keep this horse and we're gonna race him." And
huge call. You sent him from here to Kim McKellar, is that right? Did he go? Because he was at that stage one of the vets.
They were trying to process at that stage, which was a nerve regeneration operation, and which they've since worked out that it doesn't actually work. so we did that, but we and as I say, 10 years after that incident, when we scoped him, it's no different to what it was the day that Marksy did it. So anyway,
he went to Melbourne. He was in Melbourne.
Went to Melbourne. He was broken in over there, and we gave him to Gerald Ryan.
Yeah.
And Gerald was getting him ready.
He was leading trainer at the time, wasn't he? One of the leading trainers of Melbourne.
Yep.
David Moody and things.
And he was, and he had no great reps on him earlier on. And then one day he rang and sort of said, "This horse has got it. I'm going to aim him at the Blue Diamond."
Ooh.
Yeah. And
that got you excited.
Yeah. And he was getting him ready for the Blue Diamond prelude or preview, whichever one it was. And he was away for a few days, and he said to a stable foreman, "Just take that horse is ready. Just take him out for a walk. He's not to go onto the track and walk and work, And anyway, the bloke, they got him out of the stable in the morning, or whatever, and he was full of beans. So the bloke thought, I'll just take him to the track and give him a little bloody quiet one.
Yeah.
And he slipped over going down the hill, sort of half red, slipped over, went over backwards, and he ruptured all the ligaments in his hind quarter. At the time, they nearly couldn't get him off the track. They were considering putting him down there and then. And anyway, they obviously got him off the track, got him back out to Werribee, to Kim McKellar's, and did a scintigraphy in that, and nothing was broken, but it identified all these hot spots. And they said at the time, it'll be 12 months. It'll be 12 months. And
devastating news.
Oh, certainly was. And when we finally got him home, I can't remember, it was probably 4 months later or whatever like that, and he looked terrible because he'd been boxed up in this yard. And at about 10 months, I remember he was chasing us out of the paddock when we go to feed him. You've got a 3-year-old, early 3-year-old colt full of beans that's feeling 100%, and then we put him back into pre-training
with Dave O'Sullivan.
Well, first of all, he was across the road and he went and saw again.
Okay.
And then it was literally, actually 12 months to the day that he could, I suppose, work without any pain. And Dave came out and said, "Listen, I wouldn't do this for anybody, but if you want me to, and I'm not a pre-trainer, but if you want me to start with that horse, and if everything holds together, he goes to Australia, that's fine."
All right. Well, the story of O'Reilly hasn't finished yet. We'll continue on with Off the Track after this break.